Good afternoon. On February 1st, we will have the election of the Tallinn University rector. And today, in the expert online show, we have two candidates with us. The Vice Rector for Research, Katrin Niglas, and the Professor of Philosophy, Tõnu Viik. So, welcome, and we have experts with us on all matters of the university. We have questions that have been submitted to us that we have come up with ourselves, not just about the university, but also about the world at large. Welcome, everybody, all the viewers, all the university family, but all the other viewers who are watching us either live or to the recorded version. What we would like to see today is how Katrin and Tõnu are different from each other. So we are not looking for these well-rounded answers. We are not looking for answers to philosophical questions, but we want to know what are the real preferences of our candidates when it comes to resources. Let's get started. Each year in the news, we hear that the best employer has been selected. Last year, for example, it was Telia. The year before, if I remember correctly, it was Eesti Energia. Katrin Niglas, what do we have to do in order to make Tallinn University the best employer of the year? First of all, good afternoon from me as well. I would like to approach this methodologically. Since we have this thought experiment in this context, I have to point out that it's not only the organization employees that evaluated and assess it, but others as well. And they assess how willing they would be to work in that environment, in that organization. And I think the most important message here is that we have power here in this Tallinn University, and it's cool here. So the three focal arguments that should sway a person, first of all, is the organizations, the university's objective to speak to not only our people, but also the society at large. We should have an image of being open, innovative, and I would also add empathy-based, based on my vision. And third, I would like to point out that our work environment should be perceived as one in which an employee's development is supported and it offers clear career opportunities. Hello, everybody. The best award is given out by recruitment companies such as CV Online and so on. And actually, one of them has already selected to be Tallinn University among the best. And it is best for those who are graduating humanities. It seems that Tallinn University is an excellent employer in that area. But methodology-wise, I don't think it's impossible for us to be on those lists. Or rather, it is unlikely because our employees are academics. They don't come to us through CV Online. It doesn't mean that we're not good employers to our employees. We do have a subjective level of well-being that comes with a possibility to self-actualize. And something we might not always remember is that people need to have meaning behind what they do. They need to know that the work that they do means something to others as well. So if we achieve that, then I think we will have motivated employers. Of course, that also comes down to wages. We will get to wages, of course. These are questions from the personnel, and some things are in the realm of hygiene. But first of all, I would like to ask Tõnu to continue on the subject. We also have our own satisfaction survey that is answered by about 40% of our personnel. And based on that, it would seem that people are satisfied, but at the same time, in development discussions and in the hallways, we do hear critical notes as well. So what should we make of that criticism? Well, we should actually make something of the fact that only less than half of our employees answer the survey. So we should find out which part of the employees, the satisfied or the non-satisfied, answer it. I believe that when people are satisfied, they find that things are fine. I don't have anything to contribute more. Or perhaps these are people who have lost hope in the university doing something about it. And I hope that the latter doesn't apply. As far as I remember, our rate of satisfaction is high because people find that they are able to do their jobs here. They can work here. We are the type of organization where we don't really have one common project or goal. Our goal is to let our employees shine individually and inspire students, do research. And it seems to me that most of our professors and researchers believe that Tallinn University is indeed a good place to realize your ambitions. Katrin, do you agree that this high satisfaction rate is objective, that everybody is satisfied? Well, not everybody is satisfied with everything. The thing that we are satisfied with and that I would like to point out is this warm feeling, this elbow feeling, the support feeling you get from colleagues that I've noticed too. If I'm in trouble, then my closest colleagues come to my aid. And what we have both mentioned is that in the leadership model, the hierarchy is not that significant. The supervisors always hear everybody out. So I think that comes back to our history as well. We do have a bit of a common adversary, and we understand and we share the difficulties when they arise. Tõnu wanted to add something. Well, with the Institute of Humanities Council, we looked at the satisfaction survey and tried to get an overall picture of what our employee feels about their work. And we had the perception that people are happy with their academic opportunities in their workplace. They are happy with management. But then there are some colleagues around them that don't understand how important the work they are doing is. So that at times we had the feeling that despite my colleagues, I am doing very well and everything else is fine. Well, the question is not so much about colleagues as much as it is about the warm atmosphere not helping pay the bills. Let's talk about wages. What do you plan on doing in order for the wages at the university to really motivate and for them to be competitive on the market?
Well, we have to raise them. But I guess the question is where to get the money from. Yes, exactly. One of the key questions. In all these areas where we can get more resources, we have to be active. We have to be active negotiators with the government ministries, also political parties, to explain the necessity of changing the financing of higher education, that it's outdated. We need to increase our grant application and reporting capacity, because it seems to me that we're not missing out on good people, but the technical side, especially when we speak about EU bureaucratical grants and reporting. And we need to deal with private money as much as possible. In Estonia, it has not been very productive. And also in English language curricula, we need to increase the volumes because we receive tuition fees. And in law, for example, they have developed the English language curricula. We can do it in other areas as well. So one by one the topics you mentioned, asking for more money. How realistic is it in a situation where the social affairs need more funding? Is it that the funding of higher education will increase in the near future? Well, social affairs and higher education funding, what higher education needs in addition, well, less than 100 million. The social sector needs 1 billion. So it's still about political preferences. If this preference is not executed, then they say there's no money. But we're speaking about sums that boil down to political preferences. Katrin, would you comment on Thomas Asser, rector of Tartu University, to public broadcasting that 75 to 80 million is missing in higher education? Where will this money come from, and how much money is Tallinn University missing? We are aware, have been aware, that cost of living has gone up and is going up. Universities in absolute sums have received a little bit more money every year. But when we look at the average increase in cost of living, about 5%, then we have less money than we used to, and we can make these calculations on the basis of that. If we take the number of students, that we don't want more students, but we don't want to decrease the number of students. We all have been in the situation for 5 years where the funding has gone down. So this is the calculation basis to run the calculations. Well, I wasn't given the homework task of running the calculations, but let's say that if it's millions, my estimation. How many employees do we have who get minimum salary at Tallinn University? Let's be honest, that's quite a low salary. I don't know the percentage, but if it's a school worth of people, then that's too many. But the professors, associate professors, lectures don't have competitive salaries compared to other universities. Yes, salaries have gone up, but they're still lower than those of Tallinn Technical University and Tartu University. That's a fact. Well, I know about the humanities, and I dare say that the average salaries in School of Humanities are slightly over the salaries at Tartu University in Humanities, but not those of Tallinn University on the whole. Then we will have to do the same work on that scale. School of Humanities reached that position by optimizing, by scaling down teaching and number of teachers. Partially, yes, but to a large proportion also due to more research money that we now have compared to 2015. We have 2 times more, even more. I have a questionnaire for both of you, a scale. On one end, people's welfare, other end, efficiency of work. Where would you place the weight and why on that scale? I am in favor of multi-dimensional space, so I don't want to see things on a unidimensional scale. And many of our employees feel good if they can be as efficient as possible in fulfilling their tasks. And to make that happen, we need to create good conditions and clear framework. So that means that we don't compete with each other, we work with each other. We don't want to outdo our colleagues, just be as good as we can be. So I would not oppose the two, and I myself, as an employee, have always thought of things this way, that if I feel that I'm doing well, I get positive feedback about my work, then I can create good conditions for work. Well, these values, efficiency and welfare, are not contradictory in my mind as well. If efficiency is just quick time management, I have to do everything in a haste. That's not efficient, actually. In the long run, it's to the contrary, it's not efficient. And that shows why this opposition doesn't work. From the beginning of the pandemic, different surveys show that workload has increased at the university by 40%. We have the highest number of students per teacher compared to other large universities. What to do with the increasing workload? Tõnu referred to it, that you may lack time. First, I'd like to say we've already established the framework. The new career model gives quite a lot of flexibility. There's inertia, lack of resources, or maybe just staying in your comfort zone and not seeing the opportunities. But all in all, with all the steps that we discussed regarding how the university can bring in more resources, if we set a clear objective regarding salaries, and I do agree with Tõnu that the salary at the top end rises by itself or with the measures adopted. But if that's not enough to achieve the salary objectives, then we need to focus even more. Tõnu, same question to you. When I think of higher workload, 40% compared to what? When we look at the workload of academic staff over the past 25 years, then 25 years ago, what did an academic employee need to do well to be recognized? They had to be a good teacher, inspire students. Then we added the requirement of writing articles in English. Workload increased. Now we are adding the requirement to write grants and also write articles in English and teach well. And every year you need to submit grants. And with our grant distribution model, we see that it's removed from society. You also need to speak to the society and explain why your specialty is needed and what's your expertise. So actually, there are lots of layers that have been added to the workload over the years. So based on that, I'd say that just some technical skills were added with the corona crisis. This 40% came from surveys done among our own staff. And this survey was also introduced on this show. And Priit Reiska said that there are no resources to pay people extra for the higher workload. But given all that, what are you going to do? What to do with the workload system? So in addition to being burdensome for the teachers, the issue is, and colleagues have asked me to pose this question, that the calculation of workload differs from school to school and therefore unfair.
I don't know if it's unfair. Maybe So why is it first different between institutes? Because institutes have the autonomy to decide that, and perhaps the particularities of the work within an institute is so different, and one system doesn't cover it all. But the first part of your question had to do with the most painful question that we have. If we have a certain amount of money and we have a certain amount of activities, if we want to do more with the same money, then we are becoming more burdened and our well-being goes down, and we are tempted to always do it. But I would like to say that in addition to those four things, we should all learn how to the techniques in hybrid training, and we still have that same amount of money. So we have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask whether the calculation for workload could be more individualized. Do all people who are doing a career in the university have to be excellent in all areas? If we say yes, then how much do they actually have to do? When I look at my institute's experience, which you pointed out, our wage increase was partly possible because we do something less. Yes, the number of courses that we do is considerably lower, and it's not great because it means we have less choice for students, and in some curricula, it has taken away some kinds of opportunities or depths that they had before. But we looked at ourselves critically and asked, what can we do well with the resource that we have? Well, I wanted to also add that what should matter most in the university's view is academic quality. We have to make an effort in all these areas to get more resources, and some things that we don't do actually clearly mathematically are also not giving us the freedom, because it means that the resources go away. For example, the base financing for research depends on our results, on the indicators. And if we don't show those indicators and the results, then we get less resources. So that means we are worse off. So the question is, where do we democratically set the threshold for academic quality? And then we should look at what we can do of all those projects. How can we get the resource from the state for those projects, and then decide what we can do with that quality threshold well. And at least my objective is that we want to do new, awesome things too. We will get to awesome things in a bit. But of course, some old things need to be not done in that case. Of course, that mostly is the main question. We are all ready to come up with new wonderful things, but we are less in agreement with not doing things. So that was probably also one of the big problems with the last big reform. So probably there are some divisive points here. But I would like to talk about the career model and the tenure system, which gives the university, if I'm not mistaken, 55 plus or minus few professors. And it was meant that half of those tenure positions would be open competition that would bring in new bright stars from all over the world, and half of the tenured positions would give a sense of security to the best among us, so that they don't have to compete after a certain interval, so they have that perspective and security for the rest of their career. And for that whole system, we need a bit over 3 million a year. And of course, there's the time and effort that is spent on putting that system into effect. What does it seem like right now? Are the results what you expected? Has it been good? It is my child, so I have to touch on that. You talked about the very narrow tenure system when it comes to the resources that we've used. We've looked at the entire career cycle from the young professor to the leading professor. But when it comes to the tenure system, it hasn't entered into force completely. But what has happened so far has, in my opinion, been well in line with the objective. The fact that we've had those competitions is a sign of quality. How many? You said there were about 30 places under competition, right? No, I mean we have a transition period of 5 years. But in our vision, we also see that in the 6th and 7th year, we also have tenures as well. What I mean is, are we getting new bright stars? How big have the competitions been? In competition, we have had one quick one. We knew that we had very little time and we got it done. And we had 2 competitions where we had over 20 candidates. So indeed, we did have some candidates that had only one competitions with one candidate, and some were cancelled. But I think that shows that we are taking things seriously, and we are going to republish those competitions. So that shows we are taking time to consider things and do things properly. We have indeed had people come from the outside, very strong people. And some of those competitions are going to be filled with our new young people. So that's not bad in any sense, because the way we have foreseen it is that these are available and open to all candidates. Tõnu is nodding along. Yes. Well, I think in a situation where we are investing 3 million into our academic life, we can't assume that it doesn't bring anything positive. Of course, there's a whole series of positive developments here. And I do agree that we do have some new, very promising people here. And these big competitions have all been in the Institute of Humanities, right? What did you want to add? They were in the topics that were more international. So I think it was Slavic and Russian culture, Chinese culture, where the community is very big. We took Tõnu's floor away, but here we go again. In addition to what the university has done, we did indeed have an advertising campaign in our networks, and that's why it came about as it did. But I wanted to touch on the second part of this question. What we would like to offer through the system is first to our own high achievers. I think it's also something that adds layers of exigence. If we read the criteria and if we take them seriously, if I would go on tenure track, I would be very much stressed about whether I will be in line with the requirements in 2, 3, 5 years, whether I would get the grant here or not. So for sure, the system did not give a sense of security and satisfaction, it seems to me. And the worker who went on tenure track, why is that the case? He or she cannot be sure about what the results will be assessed as in 5 years. They get feedback and a yearly development discussion that is held with the head of the institute or the head of the area or the center. But these people are not, might not be in that actual body that gives the assessment 5 years on. So if you talk to the person who is on tenure track and ask their supervisors they have criteria 5 years on, and they don't know whether they are in line with those criteria yet. But then somebody from the outside will come in 5 years and assess. I would like to add here that the supervisor should in no case say that I don't know if you are on track because everything has been discussed and the work is something that is agreed to in advance. But I do agree, when we came up with the rules and the general framework, we do believe and hope. I don't see any reason to, when it comes to the concerns. I was involved with everything just so I could get feedback from the attestation committees, the evaluation committees, the selection committees, and I have systematically gathered the feedback, and there are, of course, small points of improvement when the first cycle has been completed. With the first tenure process, we can discuss everything again. But I think that we have the flexibility, and I am very glad. I would like to directly say out loud that we first set the bar higher than we might be able to reach today or tomorrow, because based on feedback, we had no reason to lower that bar, because we are going to have outside experts as well. And if they come in and if they assess that we have overdone it, it's good to lower those bars, but it's much harder to raise those bars once you have set them. So I believe it's possible that for those who have been in the first cycle, that in the end they are guaranteed equal treatment.
From the employees' situation, you say that the bar has maybe been set too high, but we are flexible. Who is the we who can tell the current employee that in 5 years' time we'll be flexible regarding the bar? No, what I mean is if there are rules about it, as far as the rules are agreed and hold true, flexibility is fine within the rule set. But what I meant was that we have the right and freedom and even obligation to come back to the rules we have created and state that we're going to change those rules. Doesn't it seem to you that maybe there's another set of rules to change? I am referring to the fact that we have two rector candidates for Tallinn University here, both recognized people and from inside the university, but nobody from the outside has set up their candidacy. Considering the rules that we have, it's expectable, which basically excludes that somebody from the outside would become the rector. The same is with the directors of schools. It's very difficult to come in from the outside, and the competition showed it this time as well. Doesn't it seem to you that maybe this should change? If we want to do what other universities have done, that the role of the employees is smaller in electing directors, then the danger is that we move towards a neoliberal university where we get a manager who will optimize us to a degree we didn't want. And with such a model, we can end up in a situation where we get somebody who doesn't understand us very well. And also we can ask whether Tallinn Technical University or Tartu University have benefited from this model. Well, what's wrong with the rector of Tallinn Technical University? Well, that's not what I'm trying to say. If we go back in time, the past rector was also elected with that model. Who used to be the rector of Tartu University? Yes, exactly. But has it been a good model? On the other hand, I think that the expectation of employees to speak along in decision making is high, and it's justified. we do inform quite a lot and discuss things with employees, but when it comes to making strategic decisions, then to the majority, it takes place in quite narrow circles. There are different negotiations, listening to feedback, exemplary process. But I think that the employees want such inclusive management where academic employees already in idea generation phase can speak along. And well, if the system has cons as well, we know. If we elect with the entire staff, then we can elect somebody who seems least threatening and is comfortable, and that can be a risk. So there are pros and cons to the model. Now, from academic staff, let's move towards support staff. First question to Katrin, the employee question. How does it seem to you? Is it fair that in the body that elects the rector, 105 people, there are no support staff representatives? Difficult question. We have discussed it. And if the election body is opened up, then I think they could be represented. But how exactly and who is the representative, that we need to think through. Same question to Tõnu. 105 people are electing the rector, whether the support staff has a representative there or not. If they have a representative there, then it's just symbolic, but yes, it would be fine with me. Do we have enough bureaucracy, too little bureaucracy, or too much of it? What is your assessment? From side of academic work and as a rector's candidate, I'd say too much of it. Why do we have a lot of it and where does it come from? But maybe you'd say what to do to reduce it. What are you going to do to decrease red tape and where? I think we still need to answer the question where it derives from. Some of it we generate ourselves, a small part. The university establishes rules that it works with and changes later on. The majority of bureaucracy comes from outside the university through Estonian legislation. It's not our task to eliminate it, but just do the work as efficiently as possible. Estonian bureaucracy is not nearly as bad as European bureaucracy. So everybody who deals with research grants in Europe know what to do. We are interested in the grants, so we can't really do anything else other than increase our capacity to manage the volume of bureaucracy so it takes as little time as possible. I'll pass the floor to Katrin in a minute, but I had a question to you. In some cases, it seems to me that the support is not offering support, but adding to reporting, which makes an academic staff member's life even more complicated. Is it true? Well, proceeding from what Tõnu said, I'm also speaking of the apparent perceived bureaucracy. If we don't understand the reasons why this information is necessary, who needs it, and what happens if we don't do it, then this is the kind of bureaucracy that you can resolve with communication to explain and to understand. But if we feel that it's bureaucracy, then based on definition, bureaucracy means that it's redundant. But I see two directions where we can reduce it. One place where redundant activity derives from is IT systems. And improving IT would help resolve it, because right now we have several systems we need to use in parallel. And secondly, clearer rules and responsibilities. So if the organization is such that we don't know who exactly does what, then often people don't dare to take on responsibility and refer someone to the next person and that is something we still struggle with and what we need to deal with. And also looking at the university regulations as a path, as a journey. In some areas, we are going through transformations in the beginning for this common understanding to evolve. We make the rules very detailed because we know these questions will come and additional questions will come anyway. We cannot put everything in the details even. But at one point, when we have this culture layer, we can make the rules leaner and the rest of it is instructions. And this is what we've done, though we have to work on those as well. Now, before I pass the floor to Tõnu, I'd like to read out a question on the same topic. What kind of support do rectors expect from support units? And should there anything be reorganized based on your own experience?
I'm not sure if from the administrative or structural side, I would expect support from the rector as a candidate. But from the rector's point of view, it seems to me that our structural support units, we have put them quite firmly under behind one wall, and academic workers are on the other side of the wall, and we don't include them in discussions. We do give them information that has already been decided, but we already talked about how all procedures have to be written down very firmly at first and then take away things. Why is that the case? Because administratively, top-down initiatives are not about refining something. It's about putting rules in place, having people get used to them, and then relieving that situation. But what happens to the support structures is they are following along with the first regulations, the first rules that nobody follows anymore for quite some time. And then we run into problems because somebody is reading off a paper that you've been doing something completely differently. Katrin was shaking her head. I did shake my head because it seems to me that we're talking about the unprofessionality of administrators and discriminating them. But I think in practice, they do work together quite a bit. Of course, the devil is always in details, and the world is so multicolored that, of course, we do hear a note of doing something wrong, maybe even being taken to court, situations where we need to save the university. But I see that all administrators want to keep the university from bad situations, and they are very much with us. But when it comes to their inclusion, of course, when we come back to the first question, what I would expect as a rector, what I expect even now, is that when it comes to these operational procedures, running procedures, the support system is responsible for making sure everything happens on time, that the rector and the rest of the university doesn't miss anything, so that everything is prepared on time and taken to the table on time, even though we don't do that physically anymore. But Tõnu, short mention at the A short note to conclude before we move out of the university with our discussion. Yes, often we make our lives too difficult because there are theoretical opportunities that somebody will take us to court. But I'm not sure if that's necessary. Let them take us to court and let's see what happens. The employees have said the university isn't living or dying. It's just persisting. Well, cultural value, memory value, those are only increasing in time. Of course, the university would like to, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, reap as much benefit as possible emotionally, in a moral sense, and the society as well, of course, through the university. So we have taken down the fragmented nature of that we saw before. So all small collections, archives don't get enough attention. We may get a little bit of benefit from them from time to time, but we have to think bigger and also in terms of space. Where do we have spaces today? We have the digital space where we are collecting things. And of course, people are going to continue to gather together. And where people have collected memories, where they keep memories, there is an internal motivation to come together to recall and to take those bits of the past and bring them to today. So we have to have that capacity, we have to manage that. Same question, the university as a memory institution. I would like to philosophically touch on memory first. Memory and remembering, it doesn't mean that we're blowing off dust stuff or something. It's about perception and brain activity. My branch of research looks towards the past, so that's definitely not something that's rotting or withering. It's something that's active and alive in libraries and museums. So their task is to come out of a passive role and be active. How do you support that as the university? You are a rector. What do you do? I go from memory institution to memory institution, making them active. No, that's probably not how it's done. But I think we need to set tasks. Of course, sometimes we might not have the strength to do it, or it might not have the potential. But in order to remember, you have to have a connection to. It has to be in today's picture, because otherwise we won't remember. Thank you for that answer. Let's go on to one of the favorite hot topics, which is sustainable development. What does that mean for you? Please name 3 concrete initiatives which you are planning on as a rector in that direction. And waste sorting, it does not count. That has to be done anyway. Sustainability, would you like to start? Katrin? Yes, we have talked about it a lot. From the point of view of our university, it means the person's well-being and the environment's well-being being in harmony as we move forward. I also always say that we can't look at it on an individual level. In order for us to all fare better in the future, a lot of us have to come out of our comfort zone and also make concessions in our well-being until we feel that we are making a contribution towards the future and the environment. But 3 initiatives I have already mentioned on the research side. sustainable development, interdisciplinary, in the center of excellence that will be founded. So we are fostering researchers coming together to discuss these topics. Have you already also come up with a task that they should solve? I'm not responsible for the content of that area because we have to turn to the experts there. But what we talked about was mental health, environmental sustainability, all the topics that are involved with those. And for all students, it's an opportunity. I wouldn't say that we should have a course and a curriculum, but for university students, it is an opportunity to use their innermost motivation and become smarter when it comes to sustainability, and by being very creative and flexible when it comes to the forms in which that work might be done. And I would like to point out that we are in the center of a city. The city is developing around us. So with our campus and what surrounds it, making it healthier, promoting healthy lifestyle, sustainable activity, we do support and promote that, and we should form our university to be such. Let's give the floor to Tõnu. I would like to conceptualize sustainability as a way of acting and behaving, developing that takes into account several layers. One is economic and financial layer. The second layer is the ecological footprint in the physical environment in which we are active. But the third layer or dimension is the social environment. We are in a social environment, which for a university in Estonia is an Estonian state. And fourth, it has a mental, psychological dimension, which means a person's mental well-being and the organization's overall spiritual environment. So first, I would like for all our employees and the students to understand the very wide meaning of sustainability. I hope that our alumni take these ideas into the society. And yes, I don't think the question is about whether we need to do to make it a part of a curriculum or a course. Instead, our students should learn sustainability and have it be part of their mindset in solving all problems that they undertake. So in that sense, it should be in all curricula. Here I would like to ask, before I give you the word, you're talking about the students' point of view, but what about the professors? Have we done enough in order for our teachers to be sustainable?
Definitely not. This discussion is important, but I, at previous debates, have also shed light on the fact that in other contexts, we also spoke about this top-down command line that now we're becoming sustainable. Probably it's not optimal, but these grassroots level initiatives that we need to think of the environment and give meaning and more grassroots level initiatives that the rector can lead as a member of the university, not as the rector, and intertwine the initiatives and hopefully that will give more inspiration to all and enthusiasm. So when people and money will come, so we have experts who help with the mission of sustainability. Well, what I wanted to stress is that we are the experts. So I'd like to emphasize that the research-based nature of sustainability, especially in a situation where it's become a popular way of thinking in society, youth wants to be sustainable. Here too, ideologies that don't really have research basis, and in all the universities sustainable way of thinking and acting, but we must promote research-based sustainability to our own people and society. That's the role of academic staff and the university. It seems to me as well that this is what the youth wants, and this could be one thing that brings the youth to Tallinn University, attracts them to study here. So we are very popular in that respect. But with sustainability, the thing is that often the slightly older generations speak about it, but do little. Yes, but I think that as a leader of smart way of life, I'm not saying it's my idea, but the green university idea that we are research-based and sustainability is a topic that's led at the rector's office level, and we have a clear platform for different target groups, including our own staff, but starting from very young people to not so young people, people young on the inside who pick up the idea and get hints or ideas how they can help with sustainability. Tõnu stated this, that in-house we have people who should know what is sustainability best of all in their own areas. I agree with that, and society also expects from us advice, new knowledge. Please tell us how we can offer it and how have we offered it in the COVID context. I don't know whether we have offered it successfully in COVID conditions. What the society saw from us was the analysis you referred to in the beginning, how the workload of teachers has increased, which identified quite important things to society. The physical meeting space is still very important in the study process, though we praise e-learning, and making studies electronic is not so easy. And hybrid studies are most demanding. It's practically impossible to be in contact with both at the same time. It would be great if Tallinn University were the one to solve this situation and come up with something that first Estonian society and then the global society would adopt. We have specialists here in this area who just might propose something. But first I'd read out a letter or a question about this topic with an assessment as well. Because digital studies have not been prioritized till spring. All the developments we wanted to do were postponed, and no resources were found for 8 years. Do you affirm that resources in the near future will be found for it? Well, I think that again, this is an example of the cooperation between schools is not sufficient, and there are many reasons, starting from the fact that the budget is allocated between schools, and for institutional activity there are no financial resources. And I think that for main activities between schools, we must find resources. How, in the situation, even if we look at the COVID experience, when we suddenly had to switch to online studies, then everybody started to invent how to do it, despite the fact that we have a digital center, education innovation centers, and so on. They tried after a while and started training our employees, but still it took a while before this cooperation between schools got off. Katrin can comment on this in a few words as well, but the main question is directed outside. What can we offer to society with the example of the pandemic? Well, actually, the offer from the Education Technology Center, and we have education technologists, and these people have been found and used, but their feedback to the rector's office has been help us find the people to train, that there's more offer of support than people taking the support, that the opportunities are there, and that some people need to be shook, that so they understand that they too should seize the opportunity. And we are already looking at it integrally, not only the digital part, but all teacher support. So it would be more integral, more wholesome, so that bits of information would not be lost, and employees would be able to come up with a long-term plan, not that today I received an email about this, okay, I should do that, but then my schedule is full and there are meetings in my schedule and I don't have time for it. So a systemic approach must be introduced. But what was the additional question? Society. How can the university provide something to the society? And I'd like to add, how can the university contribute to a society in value crisis? Well, I said pandemic, you said value crisis. Well, I'd like to quote a letter we received with a question. The university sheds light on developments in spiritual life and shapes the educated classes. How would you comment on this concern that curricula are stripped of more theoretical, philosophical subjects, and what is outlined and emphasized is practical classes and subjects? So sociology, understanding society, philosophy, psychology, in teaching such subjects that help us be people, are there enough resources for it? There is a contradiction that we are dealing with all the time. On the one hand, we want our graduates to be good specialists. Historically, we have ended up in a situation where the ideals of what are the fundamentals of a specialty, differently from 5-year bachelor's studies, we now have tried to put it all in a 3-year program. At the same time, the funding for teaching decreases year on year. So we have less time, less money, but we're trying to offer the same contents we offered 20 years ago over 5 years. Yes, you explained it very well, Tanu, but will it continue? Or are you planning to do something about it? I think we need to think it through strategically. What do we want to achieve in Estonia? We want to restore the belief in a 5-year education in Estonia, that a specialist is somebody with a master's thesis, not somebody with a bachelor's thesis. And then on bachelor's level, we can teach people about future competences and support disciplines and how to be a better person and more general subjects. And the specialty subject would come with a master's degree. Well, this means changing attitudes. It takes a long time. But what can we do in practical terms, Katrin?
Well, I'm not going to turn around history directly, although everything new is a well forgotten old and it comes in a new form. We have to remember that, of course. But I do see that when it comes to the generation coming to the university tomorrow, they are eager to learn and at their own initiative, they can learn for years and for hours and hours, and come back and tell you something that isn't really evidence-based, but it comes as a seemingly evidence-based. In any case, they are excited, enthusiastic, but we have to seriously think about it, whether it's 5 years or if it's modules or if it's personalized learning paths. How can we motivate the self-didaction, self-direction? And as far as I'm concerned, look at the experience of Google and so on, what can fit into the academic context, considering who is our student today, tomorrow, and the day after, what forms do they get inspired by. And I'm absolutely sure that if we let our thoughts free, if we have the competence and the boldness to take the serious philosophical worldview content and offer it in a form that's different, other than the cramming. What we want in the end is to be things are taught in a way that they are retained by a person in their soul, and that's how we make the society better. But that's not only the one way. Can we do something else? Are we catching up, or should we show the way in the society more, in the society that hopefully will change fast in the short term? Of course, the society has different dimensions. We have our alumni who hopefully will make the world better with the knowledge that they have gained here. But then we also have the research innovation that comes from our academics and professors directly into the society. I'll come back to the example that has been a very hot topic. Perhaps Tallinn University could be the one to show Estonia how to carry out hybrid learning. Maybe it will go even further than Estonia. Here I do agree that in addition to our alumni, we also have the teacher training, the teachers who will train our new generations who will come back to us, hopefully. So we do have a very high responsibility here as well. But being an opinion leader, being evidence-based, and at the same time also participating or being caught up in the political winds, showing the way. As academic persons, regardless of our political convictions, being evidence-based has to be the basis of everything. Of course, tolerance and listening to other parties is also as important. We have a new coalition. We are about to have a new government. You are both also members of the rectorate. What has Tallinn University done in order for the coalition agreement to contain something that would make the society better? I am not a member of the rectorate, actually. But basically, what a rectorate can do, we are not seated at the coalition negotiation table, but it does presume that the rectorate does have channels of communication with the parties, with the decision makers, that they talk to the political parties when the party programs are being written before the elections. Katrin, same question. How do we get among the political elite? As a member of the rectorate, I haven't been to the cultural committee myself. Other members have, and clearly we have been in the picture with the topics. We have our finger on the pulse. But I can say personally that sometimes a rectorate member will initiate cooperation, include academic workers, and at other points, the initiatives come from the academic side, and the rectorate can then support them and choose the focal points where the Tallinn University can have its say. I have, for example, been involved in local and regional development issues. Tallinn was the patron of those topics and still is probably. So in that wind, we have participated. Since we are on the topic of politics now, we would probably not be forgiven if we didn't ask about the tuitions. Toomas Asser, whom I cited previously, he said that we need 70, 80 million more. And he has also said that partial tuition is a solution. At the coalition negotiations right now, we have heard mention of private money being involved in higher education. Both of you, please comment on how you see the future. And if private money is involved, then in which form would it be most reasonable? Well, private money doesn't have to mean tuitions. Private money can be involved using the models that the American universities do. We haven't had success with them, but in any case, philanthropy in its various forms, having stipends, for example, that are supported by companies or professorships supported by private actors. Putting a tuition on higher education, in my opinion, is problematic. And why? Because it opens a window, and in a neoliberal state as Estonia is, the things can escalate very quickly. First, we instate a tuition that is affordable to everybody. It doesn't take anything away from anyone, as it is in various states. In the first years, it really doesn't impact your different socioeconomic strata very much. But in Great Britain, for example, 20 years ago, they instated the tuition like that. And the government didn't find the money for higher education, and they kept raising the tuitions, and today it's too expensive. But then there are other examples where the tuition has remained low, but the threat is still there. And the main counter argument is that Estonia is such a small state that we can't leave anybody behind. For economic reasons, we don't want anybody to be left out of university studies. Same question to Katrin. I also think that these dangers we should be well aware of them. Universities have to stand for tuitions not being an argument for reducing our funding. So in higher education, we should set the bar at a level where the state contributes more, as in other Nordic countries. So when economic growth comes, they should contribute more. And in addition to that, why not think as far as we are an education state? We are well known for a good education, and within lifelong learning, we already talked about personalized nano degrees or learning bites, whatever we want to call them. Have them in English. Why not also talk about education export? If we can come back to the central principle that I emphasized before, quality, we shouldn't do anything within the university in order to get cheap and stinky money, so to speak. So these cool ideas are ones that we might wrap up the session with. It's time for the last question. We are at 5:15. The time has flown with you too. Thank you very much for that, because it's been an interesting discussion. Tõnu, you said that innovation, thinking outside the box a bit, that could be something that also brings success to the university. In Katrin, with discussions, we have said that the research shouldn't be filling in the blank, but rather something new, something cool. I would like to ask Tõnu first, what is the new, crazy, cool idea that you would like to carry out as a rector? What could the university do? Well, if you're asking about crazy ideas, then the criterion is that it sets fear in people that hear it. And also, I have to say that we probably don't want for the rector to be a crazy genius who only goes outside the box, throws out ideas, and then asks the university to bring them to life. Rather, I would like for the university to have a rector who uses the potential because the university is composed of the smartest people in society. The rector is not the smartest person in the room, but he or she has to be able to put the potential of his or her colleagues to work so that they influence the society in a positive way. If you want to do that in an innovative way, that's also something. I've actually been abroad to learn how to think outside of the box. And the first rule of thumb is let go of everything that you have. The first stage is come out with something as crazy as possible. And then let's look at how much money we have. Well, I have a whole host of them. I don't want to come up with some of them, but others I can mention. For example, I've thought about greater trust in learning process. So why not think about leaving the grades A, B, C, and so on at the master's level at first, and replace them with writing feedback on a master's thesis or something of the kind. As a teacher, I feel that I think we would raise the overall level because D is such a punishment to a young learner. So that's one crazy idea, doing away with grades. Some other crazy ideas have to do with the sustainability context. Carbon-free university, that's not really that outside of the box, but there are two sides. So we know we can't be zero emissions, but on the other hand, we have soil and forest that balance out and that absorb CO2. So what if we had the Tallinn University forest, or what if we had moss on the roof or sun next to the solar panels, and then things got completely out of hand? What about having a kindergarten and a preschool at the university? And the coalition actually is giving money for having multilingual outcomes, and perhaps we should have our academic workers practice. Perhaps you can answer a question that came in English. Which project at the university could develop into the first startup that could turn into a unicorn? We have tried several of them, but there are actually two projects with potential. One's from the chemistry side, and the other one is from the education innovation side. So these are places where we have things simmering. I have discussed things with my doctoral students with whom we had the idea to use a scientific-based approach to love and to relationships, and have an app which wouldn't mean just browsing, but would something that would put people together based on science, and so perhaps have better results. In any case, thank you for the exciting, interesting ideas. For us, I think I can speak for them both of us. It has been a very exciting show, and I am sure that Tallinn University will get a very good, very smart rector. Best of luck to both of you. Thank you.